We came to Ethiopia 14 years ago. It was in 1991. We had two small children, and after 9 months of studying language, we moved down to a rural area. It's about 200 miles to the west of the capital city here, and it was just in the middle of the countryside in a rural village just at the end of the road. And there are Romo people, they're farmers, and they're strong Muslims there. So when we first moved to Awano and had a real heart to share the gospel with people, to talk to people about spiritual things, there was a real closed attitude in them. But slowly through different kinds of ministries, and they began to open up and began to hear the message of the gospel. And so that was it was a long time of sowing seeds. Over the 11 years that we were there, we saw a real change in attitude in the people in that whole area. In 2003, God called us to a different kind of ministry from out in the boondocks of Ethiopia to come to the capital city here of Addis Ababa to serve the mission in leadership.
What I've been doing since we've come to Addis, which was really new for me and quite a challenge, was to be the language school and orientation director for incoming new missionaries. We have made this special emphasis to learn the language because to effectively communicate the gospel really needs to be done in the language that the people speak and not just through a translator. And so that's one reason we've given it a high priority. And the second is to really be able to build solid relationships with people and to develop those relationships in the language that they know.
What he called me to was to help establish ministries across Ethiopia so that we can reach out to groups of people that still have yet to hear the gospel, and can also work to encourage and strengthen this church that God has raised up in Ethiopia over the last 75 years.
This is Teji Church, and this is about an hour outside of Addis Ababa, and it's a local church that we've come to help teach in. Ramonda teaches the women and I teach the men, and we stay here just about all day on Sundays teaching, and we come here about once a month, and it's a newly planted church, and so we're just trying to help strengthen them by teaching God's Word.
Now there are almost 6,000 churches, mostly in the central and southern part of the country. And they have a real zeal to reach out to the rest of the country. But a lot of their churches are in areas where there's very little education. Many of their leaders have not been able to go to school, or for that matter, to be able to study the scriptures in any kind of way so that they could teach their own people God's Word and disciple them and train them in order to really effectively reach other people with the gospel. And so what we're focusing on as a mission, and one of my roles, is to help encourage and strengthen Bible training around the country.
This is the Evangelical Theological College. With 6,000 churches in the country, there's a huge need to develop leadership, to train pastors, to train church leaders. And back in the communist days, a small Bible school, night school was started that eventually grew, and now they have around 300 full-time degree students studying, as well as rainy season courses to try to strengthen pastors and church leaders in their service and their knowledge of their scriptures and their ability to train others in the Word. And so as SIM, part of what we're doing is providing scholarships for students so that they can study. We're trying to provide faculty to teach various classes, and also helping them develop their facilities so that they can grow and serve more pastors and leaders in the country.
There's still many unreached people here in Ethiopia, small pockets all across the country still, where the gospel has not really been communicated in their language. And so what we're doing is trying to identify those places and to find missionaries and Ethiopian missionaries as well to send to live among those people and to learn their language and to be able to share God's love in some kind of practical way, like health ministry or education, and also to be able to share the gospel with them and then disciple them in the Lord. When we look at missions, everyone is excited about being on the front line. God gives this great vision to get into groups of people that have never heard the gospel and to go to them and to minister, and that's incredible and that's great and that's what we need to do. But we don't realize that there has to be support behind those people. There has to be those people helping them get oriented and helping them understand what to do and what the terrain is like and what the language is like, and helping them when they get into trouble and when they get sick. That's what we see our role is that at this time is to support those spearhead missionaries that are working to share the gospel where it's never been shared before. And we need more just like it. We need a strong base of support to do this kind of thing. And so we just want to thank you as a church for continuing to support us, even though we're not quite on the front line anymore, but as we see that we're able to encourage and strengthen many missionaries around Ethiopia so that they can be on the front lines and can get the gospel to these people who've never heard.
Amen, hallelujah. Amen, amen, hallelujah. Amen, so amen, hallelujah, so amen, hallelujah. What is Messiah, so amen. Amen, Latin, amen. Amen, Latin, amen. What is Messiah, so amen. Amen, amen. What is amen, Latin, amen. What is amen. Amen, 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 amen.